Getting pregnant on your period. Let's talk about it. This one is possible, but it really depends on where you are in your period, if you have a short cycle, a long cycle, and then also if it even is a true period. So firstly, a true period always follows ovulation. Once you ovulate, that egg comes out of a follicle. The empty follicle turns into the corpus luteum, which makes progesterone for the remainder of your cycle during the luteal phase. Once that corpus luteum degrades, it can only last so long. This is why the luteal phase doesn't really change in length. Once that degrades, it is no longer making progesterone. That hormone drops off, and then you get your period. Day 1 is your period, but the lining that you are shedding is from your previous cycle. Sometimes that can be hard to wrap your head around, but it's from the previous cycle. So that's why we say ovulation comes before your period. You could ovulate before you even get your first period. This is also why you can get pregnant even though your period is super irregular. Maybe you've been missing it for a while. And a true period is important to discuss because sometimes people say, I got pregnant on my period, but it wasn't actually a true period. It was just some random bleeding within their cycle. Sometimes if you don't end up ovulating and you have a very long cycle, you could get something called a withdrawal bleed or a breakthrough bleed. So it could look like a period, but you could ovulate right after that. You could ovulate and then also get some spotting. So it could just be some ovulation spotting and you thinking it was a very light period. So those have to be counted for as well. Now, when we're talking you getting pregnant during your period, remember your period is day 1 of your cycle. That is the first day of a full bleed. During the first 1, 2, or 3 days, it is quite unlikely that you actually can get pregnant here because it takes a while for those hormones to build up for you to actually ovulate. But once we get further along in our period, especially on our light days, we need to be careful because especially if you have a short cycle where maybe you ovulate over here. So let's say that your period is quite light and you start to see some mucus mixed with some blood, which can be hard to dictate as well. And you end up ovulating early, you could get pregnant because remember that sperm can stay alive in cervical mucus for up to 5 days. Even if you have a regular length cycle or an irregular cycle, you could still ovulate early. I've even had ovulations that are early as well, and I never do. This is why it's so important to learn to track your cervical mucus and your other biomarkers, and why you also need to be careful once you are on your period. So day 1 is super highly unlikely. Day 2 is super highly unlikely. Day 3 is more unlikely. Day 4 and onward, I'd be careful if you have a short cycle. So it's not that you're getting pregnant on your period and you're ovulating during your period, but it's the fact that sperm can stay alive if you happen to have cervical mucus overlap with your period and then you ovulate early.